We are back. We are Sports Take, hanging out with you on this Tuesday. Again, if you miss any of the program, any interviews, go to JAKIBsports.com and you can check all of those out. All right. Let's do a little comp here, Derek. I thought this would be a little fun exercise for us when we look at the NFC East and we compare the Eagles on the offensive side of the ball, the talent that they have in terms of starters versus the other teams, Dallas, Washington, and New York. Okay. Thought about it watching the game last night. And by the way, the Commanders have named Sam Howell as their starter. Excuse me, for what that's worth. We know who the other two starters are with the Giants and the Cowboys. Let's start with quarterback then. So you go Prescott, who certainly had success against the Eagles, but had some struggles last year in terms of turnovers. You have Daniel Jones, who kind of resurrected his career last year, got a contract. They're expecting big things from him this year. And then you have Sam Howell, who's kind of the unknown factor here. Then you have Jalen Hurts. This one to me is the Eagles all day. I mean, if you want to argue Prescott a little bit, but it's the Eagles all day. What do you think?
It's a slam dunk, Jalen Hurts. When you look at the numbers he put up across the board and what he meant to the offense and the fact that he minimizes his turnovers and yet he's such the ultimate weapon, the other three in the division don't compare. Daniel Jones made significant strides in the first year under Brian Daboll. Sam Howell's an untested commodity. And, of course, Dak went through the worst season of his career last year, even though Dak is a pretty good quarterback. He still went through the worst season of his career. Dak has the experience over all the other ones, but Jalen has attributes that the other three cannot touch. So when it comes to the quarterback situation, hands down, it's Jalen Hurts in that division.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, everything you just laid out there, we have no idea what it's going to look like with Sam Howell. Despite having some, I think, nice weapons, he's got some good receivers. And if McLaurin's okay, McLaurin and Dotson and, et cetera. And then Jones now has Waller, which helps, but still not enough on the outside, and Saquon. But still, he's got a very good offensive mind he's working with. And Prescott's got good receivers and he's got talent. But it just there's always some element of the Cowboys that you can't count on when it gets to crunch time, for sure. And I think Jalen elevated himself past all those, certainly Prescott last year. All right, let's go to running backs. Cowboys, little changing of the guard. It's Tony Pollard as one of their running backs. Brian Robinson, and the Smurf, Deuce Vaughn. Yeah. The lead back for Washington is Brian Robinson, fully healthy this year. And then, of course, there's Saquon. The Eagles situation is a little bit different because it's hard to really pin down one guy. Is it Swift? Is it Gainwell? Is it Penny? Is it Scott? It is definitely by committee, whereas the others, I think, are more of a featured back attack.
Right.
All that said, I tell me where you're at, and I'll tell you where I'm at on this.
Give me Saquon all day. All day. He is a complete back. He is one of the strongest backs in the NFL. Can catch it out of the backfield. His total yards from scrimmage. Understand he got injured a couple of years ago, but man, did he bounce back nicely last year. This team does not use the so-called feature back. They would change that MO real quick if they had a Saquon Barkley in the backfield. When I stack up all the running backs in this division, I think Saquon is head and shoulders the best, the most complete back in the division, no question about it.
Yeah, this to me is very no-brainerish because he can do so many different things, and he is such a good runner. He's such a good receiver. It doesn't mean the other teams can't have success with what they're doing.
Right.
And I think Pollard's going to be good. Pollard is good.
I do too.
Yeah, and I think what the Eagles are going to do committee-wise is going to be good. But if you're telling me, what we're doing here is just basically you get one choice, I'm taking Saquon Barkley all day. And you also know he's going to be running a little ticked off at just the way that everything went this past offseason. It could be his last year in New York. It's possible.
Yep.
So you're going to have a highly motivated guy on top of everything else. So I'm with you. It's Saquon all day as far as that goes. All right, receivers. Terry McLaurin for Washington, Jahan Dotson for Washington, and Curtis Samuel. They're their three. The Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup. They're their three. Then you go to the Giants, Hodgkins, Slayton, and Campbell. They're three. The Eagles, we know who the first two are. It's A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and then Quez Watkins or Amadei Zaccheaus. Of the groupings there, Derek, who are you taking?
I got to go with the Eagles. Yeah, 2,000-yard receivers. I will take the Eagles too, even with a question mark at number 3 over the other teams' number 3s. I do think the addition of Brandon Cooks down in Dallas is going to be intriguing for that team in terms of stretching the field. Terry McLaurin is straight up money, down there. Jahan Dotson has got to find his own niche, and I understand you can only be successful in the amount of times a quarterback gets you the ball. I think he's a good young talent, but I don't think he's emerged to the level that he's hoping and the Washington franchise is hoping he will be. And then you look at the Giants situation; they got a lot of scat receivers. They got little guys that are quick, and can get open. And I've told you this before. You look at the collection of receivers they have, and ones you just mentioned, and the one I'm most intrigued by is a kid who hasn't even played a game yet, in Jalen Hyatt.
Yep.
This kid, oh my goodness,
he can fly.
Oh my goodness, I can't wait to see him play. Now, next year we have this conversation. My mindset might change based on what he does to elevate the status of that overall receiving group if he can stay healthy. But as we look at it right now, it has to be the Eagles' core group of receivers. And again, it's based on 2 primary receivers with a question mark about that third. I'll take that all day, any day, over what's left in the NFC East.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you almost have to break it down 2 different ways. If you're talking about 1-2, it's the Eagles. If I had to go in order, I'd go Eagles. Maybe a little lean to Dallas, and then McLaurin and Dotson are a pretty strong 1-2 as well. But yeah, Cooks and Lamb are both potential 1,000-yard receivers. The problem you have with the Eagles is the third spot. You just, I don't know. Would I take Samuel? Would I take Gallup over what the Eagles have right now? I would.
Yeah.
I would. And you're right. Hyatt needs to be taken into consideration with the Giants. That's for sure. I think by the end of the year, he's starting.
I agree with you. I agree 100% with you. And we've seen like the Darius Slaytons in the past do damage against this Eagles team. This kid Hoskins came from out of nowhere. They picked him up in like last November, and he came from out of nowhere and was the primary weapon in their offense. But he's not on the level of these other names we're mentioning yet. Nice possession receiver, good hands, tough after the catch button, but not to the level of the guys we're mentioning. I have to give Dallas a second-tier grouping, basically because of the quarterback situation. You have a proven quarterback that can get them the ball. Daniel Jones has not really opened up. The fact that the Giants are going to a short, quick passing game, it's interesting because that's a lot of what Kansas City does. And you saw that last night in Washington. You're seeing Washington do a lot of what Kansas City does, the quick, short passing game, keep the chains moving. To them, the passing game is almost like an additional running game.
Yeah.
Because guys, shake free in the middle, set down on a hole, get the ball, boom, turn, pick up the necessary yards. Mm-hmm. But because of the level of quarterback play, I have to go Dallas second behind the Eagles in terms of receiving group.
Okay. Let's go tight ends. This gets interesting a little bit here. So the Cowboys, we know they lost Dalton Schultz. Yep. Jake Ferguson is listed as their starter at tight end. Logan Thomas, who is a nice player but is hurt a lot, is their tight end in Washington. And then, of course, Darren Waller comes over from Vegas and is the Giants tight end. And then the Eagles, it's Dallas Goedert. So of that group, if Waller's right, he might be pushing Goddard. I'd still lean towards Goddard. Where are you at with this?
Same place you are. The only reason I didn't let Waller's name slip out on my lip before is because he has the injury history. But in terms of body size, athleticism, if he could stay healthy, I might pick him over Goddard. But when it comes down to the physicality of it, and being able to get the yards after the catch, and let's face it, Goddard's had the injury history also. But Ferguson was an understudy to Schultz, and now Schultz is gone, so he's got to elevate his game. Yeah, and Logan Thomas is the same way. Every year I look at him, I say, this could be a year he could be a Pro Bowler. Boom, all of a sudden he's gone 4 or 5 games. Shoulder, knee. The other team outside of Dallas, the other team, 2 teams, Washington and the Giants, have quality tight ends, but you don't know how long they're going to have them. And the Eagles, well, you can say the same thing about Dallas Goedert, but because of his body of work when he's out there, I've got to take Goedert. Yeah. No question.
He's been banged up, but less injured, it feels like, than Waller has, of late. So, that's another one, TBA, I think, a little bit to kind of see, what it looks like here. Without going through every piece of the offensive lines here, you have Dallas and they made Zach Martin very healthy. I'm sure you guys talked about that, last week, but he's back. Washington's offensive line, I think, is still in question a little bit, and as is the Giants, and then it's the Eagles. This is another slam dunk. To me, it's Eagles, Cowboys, and then the other 2 are toss-ups.
Oh, there's no question. There's no question. Both the Giants and Washington needed to do some work to patch up offensive line issues last year. To what degree, I don't know. We're not going to find out until the season starts. You look at what Saquon ran behind, and Saquon still had, 1,000-yard rushing last year.
Yep.
And the offensive line wasn't the best. Washington has 2 pretty good backs in Robinson and Antonio Gibson, but they didn't have that measure of success because of a porous offensive line. This Eagles offensive line from tackle to tackle, you look at, they have a future Hall of Fame center, a future Hall of Fame right guard, right tackle. You have an up-and-coming left tackle. If you said position, I would give Dallas the edge in terms of just left tackle. But in terms of line play from tackle to tackle, those other 3 teams can't touch the cohesiveness and the effectiveness of what this Eagles offensive line has been able to do the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think the other thing that you start to take into account when you look at this is, coaching. And I understand from an Eagles perspective, it's a little bit of an unknown with Brian Johnson, but he was already here. He has the relationship with Hurts. I'm assuming there's a smoothness to this. Washington, it's a little bit of an unknown how it's all going to work with Bieniemy. Bieniemy's had a lot of success, but how's it going to work with this group and everything else? The Giants with Dable and was it Kafka, who is their guy? They had a lot of success last year. They did. They had a lot of success last season, and it worked out pretty well for them. Now with Dallas, it's Mike McCarthy calling the plays. It's going to look a little bit different. So if you're looking at everything between talent, coaching, sort of support that Brian Johnson's going to have because Nick Sirianni's here, again, this is a category where I would go Eagles.
Yes.
Over the others. Like, I think Dable is a really talented offensive mind, but I don't know that he quite has fully that roster that he wants yet. I don't know if Bieniemy has the offensive line that he fully wants yet, right? And so I'm going Eagles here.
I can agree more. Look at the volume of Pro Bowlers they have on that offensive line. You look at the depth and rotation. There are a couple of guys. There are a couple of guys in the Eagles that might start for Washington or the Giants, but you can't say that about the offensive line play of Washington or the Giants starting for the Eagles. And so with that said, there's no question about it. But it starts with Jeff Stoutland. Jeff Stoutland is second to none in terms of coaching up and cross-training his offensive linemen to fit plug and play type offensive lineman. The other teams don't have that. When one of their linemen goes down, it's a glaring weakness. That's not the case with this Eagles offensive line. Mm-hmm. And that's why they're head and shoulders. They are head and shoulders above the other 3 in the division.
Yeah, and the other thing that we haven't really maybe talked about a lot, we talked about it before camp started going in, was the competition at right guard, which really hasn't been much of a competition. It's been kind of a runaway here for Juergens. And Steen will get that year where he can learn, kind of progress the red shirt, if you will, that a lot of the players had last year. But yeah, this is Juergens' gig. And there's no question about it this year until Kelsey retires and then he moves over to center. But right now it's his gig.
And like I said, I don't care who they put in at that right guard spot. I don't think it's going to be a glaring weakness because of who's playing to the right and to the left of them. And that takes a lot of pressure off them. I don't think the other teams can say that. Maybe Dallas has a pretty good offensive line. And now that Zach Martin is back, it's going to be better, But I don't think they have the depth and the rotation that this Eagles offensive line does. Every team has to have that because injuries are going to occur. But in terms of it not being a glaring weakness when somebody else steps in, other three don't have it like the Eagles do.
Yeah. And look, I mean, there's so many different things that you have to take into account, but I see a team last year that was like third in the league in scoring. That I think the quarterback's just getting better. I think Devontae Smith is just getting better. I think Dallas Goedert, when healthy, can produce more for sure. A.J. Brown, he's only 25 years old. He might be able to get better. So there's a lot of things that you look at with this team. Not to say that the other teams can't, get better. Like I don't think. I mean, where are you at with this, Derek? I don't think Daniel Jones was a fluke last year. Like I think Dable has figured out the way to best utilize him. And I think I don't think he's ever going to be great, but I think can be a good quarterback. Solid.
Yes, I've said that. I've said it before, and I agree with you 100%. Brian Dable walked in there and identified how to make him better. Daniel Jones put his trust and his faith in Brian Dable, and it worked out for them. And part of the process was getting Daniel Jones to shorten up his passes. And that helped, with his completion percentage and, moving and change. And I think Dable is going to enhance that even further this year. And we forget that Daniel Jones has the capability of taking off and running at any given moment. Heck, he went 80 yards before the turf monster tripped him up against Eagles. But I do think Dable did an incredible job of identifying how to make Daniel Jones that much better. And obviously they feel comfortable with him now because they paid him that money this past offseason. So it's going to be interesting to see. And the few samples I've seen of Daniel Jones is this shortening the passing game. 1, 2, 3, throw. 1, 2, 3, throw. Don't take unnecessary hits. A guy will sit down in the hole in the middle of the field, find him. That's all you got to do. Find them. Let them turn and do the work. Keep the chains moving. And you look at the difference in terms of his touchdown passes, decrease in his turnovers, and he was a big reason why the Giants even got to the playoffs because of the play of Daniel Jones. Plain and simple.
Yeah, no question. Hey, update on McLaurin, who injured his toe last night in the game, according to Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network. Good news out of the MRI. Sources say there is optimism for week 1. He's more day-to-day than anything. The scan showing no major injury. Because you know how weird that toe thing can be. You get a turf toe, it's basically a separated toe. And then all kinds of bad stuff starts happening.
See, Tone is saying we're being too nice about Daniel Jones. I don't think so.
I don't either. I think
we're being too nice.
I don't think he's great. Don't get me wrong. Like any day of the week, I'm taking Jalen Hurts. Any day of the week, it's not even
no
close.
question.
But solid.
Let's give credit where credit is due. He improved his game. If he didn't improve his game, the Giants don't make the playoffs. They don't have a stellar defense. They don't have a collection of top flight receivers. No. They don't have a great offensive line. But yet, you compare 2022 to 21. Okay, 2022, his completion percentage, 64%. 2022, 67%. He played 11 games in 21. He played 16 games in 22. He had 3,000 passing yards. He had 15 TD passes, but only 5 interceptions. His QB rating went from 84.8 to 92.5. So that's an improvement. So give credit to Brian Dable for identifying how to make him better, and for Daniel Jones for believing and trusting Dable that if his way is, if I do things his way, my game's going to improve. If my game improves, I'm going to help my team be a better team. And all those things fell into place.
Yeah. And look, I guess this is more to Tone's point. Like, Jones is very Saquon dependent. If Saquon goes down, they're in big trouble. Whereas I don't think that Jalen needs that great stud back.
No,
like there's the distinction.
No, the offense is going to flow through Jalen no matter what, no matter who's back there. And Eagles tell you that by the way they've orchestrated their running back contingent. They went out and got two guys who are proven, but they didn't go out and get the best back available. They got two really good backs, but they didn't go out and get the best back available out there in the open market. If that was the case, they would have got Kareem Hunt a long time ago.
Dan asks, how good would Daniel Jones be with the Eagles personnel?
I think he would be even better.
I think he'd be even better too. I don't think he'd be as good as Jalen Hurts, but I think he'd be even better than what he showed with the Giants last year.
I agree. No, he's not. He wouldn't be Jalen Hurts, but he would definitely be better. And I think his numbers would have been even higher, in his Eagles offense. I think Nick Sirianni was smart enough also to figure out what makes Daniel Jones a better quarterback. Look at the collection of pass catchers he had around him. And I do think he would have been better behind this Eagles offensive line and with those weapons the Eagles have and who he's handing them and how dominant of a running game they had to take a lot of pressure off of the quarterback as well. That comes into play also.
Yeah. I think also, like, if you go to the other side, and we're not going to sit here and break down every single position for these teams, but if you look at the Cowboys defense, if you look at the Giants defense, if you look at Washington's defense, and you look at the Eagles defense, and some of this is, in fairness, comping off of last year when personnel has changed. So it's a little bit, skewed, not an exact science. And you have to take into account what teams lost and what they added. But Dallas adds a Stephon Gilmore. That's a big deal. Other teams, add, et cetera.
Washington added Emmanuel Forbes in the first one.
Yeah.
It took him. Nobody thought he would go ahead of, some of the other DBs that were out there, but he did. Right. Washington was one of the worst teams in the league in terms of generating turnovers last year. Mm-hmm. This kid, I believe, had 6 or 7 INTs in college last season, so he's somewhat of a ball hawk. They're looking for somebody who can change the field.
Yeah.
And that's why they went out and got him. So across the board, when you look at the defenses, obviously the Eagles have a better defense. They lost a lot of key personnel. We're going to have to see how good and cohesive they are with all of the influx of new personnel they have now playing defense this year. Right. But they have enough cornerstones to keep this thing moving forward, to keep players calm when things are unraveling against them. And let's face it, there are going to be situations where things unravel against them. No matter how good they look on paper, they're playing pretty good offensive teams, playing great quarterbacks this year. So you got to have enough cornerstone of a veteran presence to stabilize a lot of things that could start unraveling on you. And Eagles have done that, bringing in an influx of new people, but yet keeping a core group of, when you keep Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, get Bradbury back, re-sign Darius Slay, those cornerstones are the stability factors in a defense with the influx of all the new players that are coming in.
Yeah. I mean, so last year, both the Eagles and the Cowboys were in the top 8 in terms of scoring defense. Okay. They were very, very close like Dallas gave up 20.1. The Eagles gave up 20.2. Okay. That's how tight they were. The other metrics, you could look at who can get to the quarterback the most, who can create turnovers the most, who the Eagles are very good against the pass. They weren't as good against the run. Can they improve those areas? I mean, there's a lot of different things that you look at here. Dallas is in an interesting situation. Like, I don't know. Jerry had a lot of patience with Jason Garrett. I don't know that he has patience beyond this year with Mike McCarthy if they don't play well. You know what I mean? Like, or if they don't advance in the playoffs, because it's like, hey, I turned it over to you, man. Like, I gave you play calling, and I'm not trying to sound cruel here, but Jerry's not getting any younger, which means the patience level's probably lesser and lesser there. Like, I think Ron Rivera is very much on a hot seat. He was inherited, by Josh Harris and his crew. I think Dable's very safe. So he's different and Sirianni's different, but I think the other two, you can make a case. There's some questions there, with their future.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Washington hasn't had a winning season under Rivera. They won a division with a losing record.
Right.
They haven't had a winning season under Rivera. They haven't gone deep in the playoffs. They've only been in the playoffs one time under Rivera. So yes, he's on the hot seat. McCarthy, same way. Can't get past the first round with all that talent they have down in Dallas. He's made a lot of gaffes in the past when he's been a play caller. Mm-hmm. Now the onus is on him. Jerry Jones 100% endorses him now, but we know how fickle that can be and how things change day to day, week to week. You know, the fact that he's assuming the play calling, you know, and everybody across the league is kind of snickering that he's calling the plays now.
Right.
You know, and it's not just us being Eagles fans looking at Dallas. You know, I'm looking at a lot of the national pundits and have big question marks about him being a play caller down there.
Mm-hmm.
If he screws this up this year, when you bring in a Stephon Gilmore and a Brandon Cooks, and especially a Brandon Cooks to go along with CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, you know, if you screw this up, you're on a short bus out of there, bud.
I think so too. I would agree with that. All right, let's hit it. Let's come back and we will talk a little Phillies. We have an NFL segment coming up, another injury update for a key receiver this year. We'll let you know about that in addition to a bunch of other stuff. And Derek, we pick it back up with our NFC tour here and how we think things are going to finish out. We're going to do the NFC South. We'll give you the order in which we think they will finish. We'll break down each of those teams. I think I'm going to guess you and I aren't on the same page on this one. Okay. I'm just going to say I have pretty good confidence, at least in terms of the division winner, that we are on different pages, even though we have not discussed it. I promise. Scout's honor. We have not discussed it, but I think
we have not.
Pages. All right. Let's hit it. Let's come back. We'll talk some baseball, talk some Phillies when we come back. He's Derek Gunn. I'm Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. I want to tell you right now about Pro Action Restoration. Pro Action Restoration. We've had so much crazy weather lately. You could get flooding. Unfortunately, we know bad things happen with fire, with mold, with smoke, right? And if any of that happens, you're not really sure who to turn to. Well, Pro Action Restoration is the place that you turn to because they're on call 24 hours, 7 days a week to assist. I reached out to them on a Saturday. They got right out my parents' house. They cleaned it up. The price was right. I mean, we didn't know what we were going to do, frankly. Their basement was flooded. It was really, really bad. They're licensed, bonded, fully insured, and they've been serving the tri-state area for more than 2 decades. Pro Action Restoration will work in conjunction with your insurance company. So again, it could be water, fire, smoke damage, mold remediation, you name it, they can handle it. Give them a call, 610-623-3760, 610-623-3760, or online at proactionrestoration.com.